a hot minute since we touched this franchise. Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project. We're going to be playing on single player, but before I get into which turtle I'm choosing and why, to start with at least, I'm inputting a cheat code here on the title screen. It's a spin off of the Konami code. Instead of it being 2 up, 2 down, left, right, B, A, it's 2 up, 2 down, left, right, A, B, start. And that allows you to access this options menu. I'm sticking on the highest difficulty I can select by default, but I'm increasing the amount of lives just so I don't guarantee a game over. The turtles are enjoying their vacation on a beach in Florida. When suddenly... Come on! April's report's just about to start! Here in New York, crime is escalating every day. Gee, what happened? Bummer, dudes! It's Shredder! Turtles! I'm taking April along with Manhattan Island. If you want them back, come and get them. You know, when April said that the crime rate was elevating, I don't think she meant it this literally. Scene 1, let's go Turtles, the start of a long, hard battle begins. It's definitely the latter of those two things. So, by and large, Turtles 3 is very similar to Turtles 2 on the NES, but like Turtles 1, it's overall an original game, because TMNT 2, the arcade game, it is a port of the arcade game to the NES. This is that same gameplay system, just slightly fleshed out a bit more. For one thing, the Turtles' moveset has been completely overhauled. While they only have one normal attack unlike the last game, they still have the jump kick, but now if you press down on the attack button, you have a throw, which is the best technique in the game. That's the thing I just did there. That will kill just about every single normal Foot Clan member that you come across throughout the game. Later game enemies can survive that. They usually take 2 or maybe 3 throws. But what's really good about the throw is that it can also hurt other enemies by throwing people into them. So it's just your best way of getting around besides the jump kick. Additionally, you do have a special attack, which I did a moment ago as Raph with the drill forward. However, unlike the last game where you did that and it did no damage to yourself, you sacrifice a point of health to do that. Unless you're at 1 health, in which case you can just spam it willy-nilly with no problem. You do that by pressing A and B somewhat simultaneously. It's not exactly simultaneously like it would be in the Super Nintendo games. It's more like you press A and then B like a fraction of a second later. It's the best way of attacking in the game. With that said, the special attacks also where the Turtles differ the most. By and large, they all have the same range, the same attack strength, the same speed. It's the special attack that's different. Raph is the drill forward, which is why he's my preferred one, because that not only covers a lot of range, it can also be used when I'm at 1 health, as an escape technique to get away from enemies. The other Turtle special attacks, we'll see as we go through though. Because another change that TMNT 3 does from TMNT 2 is that back in TMNT 2, if you died, you still respawned as the turtle you selected at the start of the game. So if I was Raph at the start, I was Raph that entire game. In TMNT 3, though, you get the option to select your turtle again at death. Meaning if someone's not working out for the current situation and you need a different special attack, you can go straight for that. Get used to hearing the sound effect, by the way, because I really do spam the shit out of the special attack on 1 health. Notably as well, there's also a mode you can access via a cheat code that makes whatever turtle you respawn as at death completely random. You do that at the title screen. I believe it's pressing down 5 times for a single player mode and 10 times for 2-player mode. But at that point, like, you can just go willy-nilly and you'll just randomly get whichever character you get. Which I would think overall is probably the most fun way to play the game in 2-player. Because this game can be a little hard as single player as it is. As 2-player, it's complicated. As while you can deal with enemies more easily, I think they do throw a few more at you, or they at least have more health, which can be rough. I'd say out of all of the beat-em-up styled TMNT games, at least in the classic style, before you get to like the GameCube games like Battle Nexus, this is probably the hardest out of them, at least even on its normal difficulty. Yeah, technically TMNT4 or Hyperstone Heist are harder on their hard modes, but just in terms of what this game expects you to survive in some cases and the amount of time you go without healing items, it's easily the hardest. Technically, I think TMNT1 might also be harder, but TMNT1's also a little bit weird because it wasn't a beat-em-up to begin with. It was a alright platformer. With that said, time for the first boss fight. Good old Rocksteady Sans' his buddy Bebop. He has more or less all the attacks that the bosses are going to have throughout the game. He has a charge attack he'll usually use to either get to you or get out of your own combo attacks. He's got a diagonal upwards attack with his harpoon gun, same with a distance attack. And he's got a kick he can use to occasionally try to get out of your combos, but it's usually the least successful as attacks. And there we also saw the special attack for Mikey. He does a jump kick that goes upwards diagonally. It's pretty good for range. But now it's time for Scene 2, Cowabunga Dudes. Let's ride the way back to Manhattan. Stage 2 starts off a little weird because we got this surfing section here, but it doesn't work like later surfing sections would, where every enemy is taken out in one hit and it's more so an avoidance game. The enemies here are fully fledged Foot Clan members, and they take the exact same amount of health as they would elsewhere. But we still get a little bit of that avoidance game in sections like this, where you just have to avoid the ones jumping out, because I don't think you can take them out. Plus, later down the line, you're going to have some electrical orbs to avoid. Thankfully, the game likes to spawn enough enemies that it causes the NES slowdown to kick in to try and process all the sprites. So if anything, it's easier than some of those can be. By the way, as you may have noticed by now, we've already seen several different colors of Foot Clan. It is like what TMNT4 would later do, as well as all the other games, where every single color of Foot Clan usually has something different going on. Like, the purple ones are just the normal ones. They have nothing real special going on, besides maybe some unique animations here and there. The red ones usually like to throw shurikens. Pink ones that we'll see down the line have spears that are super annoying. It gets to a point where you can figure out what you're about to go through in a combat section based off what's about to spawn. Thankfully, there's no Foot Clan members in this game that can actively guard attacks from memory. That was mostly started in TMNT4, and at least in those games you also had ways to get around that. If anything, the harder thing about hitting enemies in this game is depth perception. Because what the range of your attacks are is always kind of a hard thing to figure out in beat-em-ups, but especially in TMNT 2 and 3, it's real weird. If anything, that's really why the throw is another really good attack. Because while yes, you're invincible during it, while yes, it basically one-shots every normal Foot Clan member, while yes, it can also harm others that you throw into it, it also has really good range around you. It can go much more far forward than you think it can, and it might be able to grab things a little higher or lower than you. Also, here we got the clan in speeder things that can shoot at you. They're harder to hit than you'd think just because they go into their attacks without much warning. With that said, a couple of good jump kicks can take them down pretty quick. By the way, the jump kick, it's really good at knocking enemies away from you, but I believe it is the weakest form of attack you got in the game. Like, I want to say if a normal attack is 1 damage, I think a jump kick is like a half point of damage. Still, it's really good if you want to play a game of avoidance and just trying to get away from any enemies. But now we're on a submarine. You need to be a bit careful, because not only are there turrets firing fireballs at you that will actively damage you, but the Foot Clan that jump out of the potholes on the submarine, or I guess portholes, they can be a little dangerous, not because of how they swarm you, but because when they land, they are counted as an active attack. So make sure you're not standing directly beneath them when they land, otherwise you might just get cheap shot. Also notably, like in many other games on the NES, basically every single stage and environment in the game has a mini bio in the manual. I want to note them just for the pun on the first stage back at the beach. That's Fort Slaughterdale Beach. Palm trees and warm sand, it's a far cry from the steel and concrete back home, but Shredder sent some hometown boys to bring you back to reality by kicking sand in your eyes, otherwise known as just being in Florida. Source, I lived there when I was bored. And apparently part of where I live now has its own funded Monopoly game, which, that sounds like that general area now that I think about it. Oh boy. Despite each of the various Foot Clan soldiers having a lot of different weapons, it really is the ones that have some amount of range that are really annoying, just because, like many other beat-em-ups, as you approach the long-ranged enemies, they tend to back away a lot, and if they back up all the way off screen, you really can't do much about them until they just decide to come back on. The kunai throwing ones and the shuriken ones are usually the worst with that. For now, though, it's time for Boss 2. This is Ground Chuck. He's got the charge, but he actually telegraphs he's going to do it, unlike Rocksteady did, and he tends to get a little stuck at the edge of his screen, and you can use that to make some really cheap shots. And again, special attack's really useful here because you can just kind of phase through his hitbox. Towards the latter half of his health, though, he does steal that pipe off the wall and use it to have a pretty wide-ranging swing. But if you just died and are on a fresh health bar, you can just spam the ever-living shit out of your special attack to take out the latter half of his health, no problem, because game mechanics. Stage 2's not too bad overall. Stage 2 is probably the last stage I'd consider easy, although it's also the last stage that doesn't have any health recovery items from memory. Scene 3, watch your step along the bridge of danger. Ooh. You do need to be careful here, though, because this is where we start encountering a lot more bottomless pits. As while they were technically in the last stage, because you can fall off the submarine, you can catch yourself on some of the bottomless pit edges in this game, and it can save you from falling off for a second, as well as you can use that to avoid some attacks, but you do eventually fall off. Though bottomless pits in this game aren't instant kill, they just do, I think, like 2 damage to your health, and then you just spawn back up here. So you don't have to worry too much. If anything, you could use them more to your advantage than anything, because you can just easily toss enemies out into it, but be careful all the same. With that said, now we're playing as Donatello. Donatello's special attack is another one I really like. Mind you, the one I really don't like too much is Mikey's, if only because I think its hit arc's a little hard to hit enemies with. Donatello basically does the same thing as Raph, only he's a spitting propeller of damage, so I think he just has a little more range when he does it, but he doesn't go nearly as far forward, though, so you need to keep that in mind. It's also this stage we start encountering enemies like the Rock Soldiers in their various versions. The Rock Soldiers are beefier than the average Foot Soldiers. As well, they can usually break out of your attacks more often, and they have a charge attack that, in some of the later games especially, is very hard to dodge overall. But here's my least favorite Foot Clan type in the game, the Spears. They have a lot of range, and a single stab from them will just send you flying to the opposite side of the screen. In fact, very often it can send you flying into a pit, so be careful of them. They are rough. With that said, the previous stage was the Typhoon Tidal Pool. Catch a wild wave on your jet-powered surfboard, but watch out for sharks and foot soldier disguises. Baron Von Spleen's battle barge will keep your head from above water, if you can keep from getting fried by the flamethrowers at least. And this stage is Brooklyn Bridge is falling down. Shredder's unnatural earthquake has had some devastating effects on the bridge that'll leave you trembling. There is a substantial part of me that misses when Shredder was more or less just a goofball villain, because the more recent 20 years worth of TMNT has taken him much more seriously, to mixed effect. He had some good moments in 2012, 2003, he's all over the place because of that series' weird narrative stuff here and there. I like what they did with him in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I should note is actually the reason I'm doing this LP. I just finished watching through that, and I liked it a lot, especially the movie. But Stage 3 is also one of the first stages with a mini-boss. We got Slash here. Despite his status as an evil turtle, he's also a very easy boss. He might spend a lot of the time of the battle just hopping around, but as you can see, he doesn't have a lot of health considering he's already flashing. The charge attack he has where he rolls on his shell can be a little tricky to dodge, but it's also very easy to hit him in it, so not too bad. And plus, they give you a full health restore right afterwards, because the pizza items in this game are full health restores. But there's also not that many of them. By and large, most stages only have one, if they have one at all. Like, I don't even think the very long final stage has 2. So if anything, you're going to be relying more on dying to get a full health restore in this game than anything else. I should note, by the way, I do have 7 lives right now, which counts as 8 lives because 0 counts in this game. But I technically have more than that because you do get continues in the game. You get 3 continues, and I believe you just start off at the beginning of the stage you died on. Or maybe the most recent screen transition in the case they have one. It's been a while since I've had to use a continue, because you do get extra lives at a pretty decent rate in this game. I think it's roughly every 25 to 50,000 points, although I think they get a little less common once you start getting upwards towards like 800,000 points. Mind you, I will also note, I don't usually play this game on normal mode. If I want to have fun, I usually do approach this game on easy, if only just to make the bosses a less annoying fight, as the problem with the bosses in this game to me isn't the amount of health they have, except in one instance, it's how sudden their attacks can come out. They have very little warning, and at times, they really do feel like they read your inputs. Most enemies do to an extent even, especially if you're doing the jump kick. Enemies can very easily counter that, so you need to be a bit careful. Also, light blue foot soldiers like to pick up items that they can throw at you. Just be careful when you hit them, because it will fall on top of you. And now it's time for Bebop's and Rocksteady. Despite who he is, Bebop's got a lot of range because the wrecking ball on his head he can throw forward for about half a screen length. His kick that he does roughly after every hit you do on him as well makes him kind of hard to counter. Or you can die and then do the strategy we talked about before, where you just spam your special attacks at that point. This is Leo, by the way, who has a really good special attack. He spins in place, and compared to most special attacks, this one can do multiple hits. Because most, if they do multiple hits, because you placed yourself there particularly, or the enemy's moving in a special way, Leo can do it just by standing still. It's real good for that. But that's stage 3, despite being the first of the not easy stages, quote-unquote, like I said earlier. It gives you a health refill, and the first boss isn't much to write home about, so it's nothing too bad. It's really from around here on that things start to escalate a lot. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we're going to see what we can do on Manhattan now that we're on it. See you guys then.